Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? Because when Camilla Harris walked into a room, she carried silence with her. The kind of silence that made even senior officers glance away. It wasn't arrogance, it was weight. The kind that came from knowing exactly how much life you've taken and how much more you might have to. At 31, Staff Sergeant Camilla Harris had earned her reputation the hard way, one impossible shot at a time. No one ever called her a hero. Heroes were loud. Heroes needed medals and ceremonies. She didn't. Her face was unremarkable, her voice quiet, her posture neutral, the kind of woman who could disappear into a crowd or vanish into a hillside with a rifle and a heartbeat steady as stone. That morning the war felt tired. Sand had settled over everything, the roads, the vehicles, even the men's faces. But something about the way the intelligence officer's voice cracked as he spoke made it clear. This was different. "Gentlemen and Sergeant Harris," said Major David Chen, standing by the projection screen that flickered with static before showing a map littered with red dots. "What I'm about to brief is classified, top secret." The air changed. Conversation stopped. Even the humming of the projector sounded sharper. Chen's next words landed like bullets. "6 weeks ago, we began losing personnel to sniper fire at an alarming rate. Not the usual opportunistic shooters. Precision kills. Long range. Consistent." He clicked the remote. The next image was blurry. 5 figures in tactical gear. The faint shapes of rifles slung over their shoulders. "Intelligence confirms an enemy sniper team. All female, recruited and trained by their military intelligence directorate. They're not local fighters. These are professionals, inserted into our area specifically to target coalition forces." Someone scoffed quietly. "Female snipers, that confirmed." Chen didn't blink. Absolutely. They were selected for mobility and misdirection. In this region, women attract less suspicion. They move freely, set up positions we'd never search, and vanish before we realize where the shot came from. In 6 weeks, they've racked up 89 confirmed kills. Convoys, patrols, commanders. The room shifted, shoulders tensed. One officer exhaled through his teeth. 89 confirmed. That wasn't luck, that was art. Camilla watched quietly from the back. Her notebook was open, but she wasn't writing, just absorbing details, phrases, body language. Every sentence built a picture in her mind, one piece at a time. "They operate in pairs or as a full team," Chen continued. "Positions change every 24 hours. They're ghosts. Counter-sniper teams can't even find the brass they leave behind. We've failed to track them 3 times. Traditional tactics aren't working." "So what's the plan?" Captain Rodriguez asked, his tone halfway between curiosity and fatigue. Chen didn't answer. He just looked toward the back of the room. Every head followed. The quiet woman with the ponytail looked up. "The solution," Chen said, "is Sergeant Camilla Harris." The silence after that sentence wasn't the respectful kind. It was the wary kind. The kind that precedes a question no one dares to ask. Rodriguez finally broke it. "You're saying she's going after them, alone?" Chen nodded once. "She's the only counter-sniper in our inventory who's successfully eliminated a female sniper team before, 18 months ago. Different war zone, similar tactics. She understands how they operate because she thinks the way they think." Now every gaze was on her, as if they were seeing her for the first time. 31 years old, average height, steady hands resting on the table. Her eyes were dark brown and unreadable, like polished stone. Camilla met no one's eyes. She didn't need to, she just waited. Chen kept going. "Sergeant Harris has 73 confirmed kills over 8 years. 41 of those, the targets never even knew she was there. 13 counter-sniper missions, 13 successes, 100%. Rodriguez leaned forward. "You've done this before." Camilla finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it carried, every syllable deliberate, grounded. I study their pattern until I can predict their next position. Then I get there first and wait. When they arrive to set up their shot, they become my target instead. I don't hunt them. I let them hunt themselves." The room didn't quite know how to react. Chen smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said he'd seen her do exactly that. "They won't make it easy," Rodriguez said. Camilla's gaze lifted to his. "I don't need easy, I need predictable. Every sniper has patterns, preferred ranges, favored angles, little habits they don't even realize. Find those and the rest is math." Outside, a helicopter passed overhead, a deep, rhythmic thump that rattled the walls. No one spoke until the sound faded. "The enemy team has 5 members," Chen said, clicking again. 3 identified. The leader goes by Viper, 25 confirmed kills. The others Shadow and Whisper, 15 each. 2 unidentified. We know they exist from rotation patterns. They operate like professionals, 5 shooters covering 24-hour cycles. Camilla stood and moved closer to the projection. The grainy photo of the 5 women filled the wall. One face stood out sharper, colder. Viper. Her jawline strong, her eyes narrowed behind sunglasses. Even through the static, Camilla recognized the look. Confident, controlled, dangerous. "What's their next likely target?" she asked. Chen pointed to the map. "Supply convoy, sentinel to Apache, 40 kilometers of exposure, 2 ridge lines on either side. They've hit that route twice. Intel suggests they'll hit it again within 72 hours. Camilla nodded. "Then that's where I'll be." She gathered her folder, tucking it under her arm. "I'll need complete operational freedom. No radio check-ins, no backup teams, no drones. I work alone. Silence keeps me alive." Rodriguez frowned. "You're talking about 5 trained snipers, Sergeant, alone. That's suicide." Camilla looked at him for a moment, not angry, not proud, just flat. "I've done it before. In sniper work, numbers don't matter. Position, patience, and precision do. They'll have none of those advantages. I'll have all 3. Chen nodded. "You have full operational authority. Whatever support you need, it's yours. But I trust you know when not to use it." Camilla gave a small nod. "Always." The briefing ended. Chairs scraped, papers shuffled, men muttered under their breath. By the time they looked up again, Camilla was already gone. Her quarters were small, 1 cot, 1 locker, 1 desk. She laid out her gear the way she always did, left to right, in order of necessity. Her M210 enhanced sniper rifle came first, chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum. Official range, 1,200 meters. Unofficially, 1,400 if you had the discipline. She had the discipline. She checked the optics, Schmidt and Bender variable scope, cleaned the lenses, reset the elevation turret. Next, her Mark 12 SBR, her backup rifle. Lighter, faster, for when patience failed and the world collapsed into movement. She ran her hand over the barrel, then the scope mount, then the trigger guard, the small ritual that grounded her before every mission. Next came the tools. Range finder, ballistic calculator, wind meter, night vision, spotting scope. Then finally her notebook, the real weapon. Page after page of enemy behavior patterns from past missions. Shot times, distances, angles. She flipped to a clean page, wrote 1 word at the top in calm, precise handwriting. Viper. For the next 24 hours she lived inside that word. She memorized every report, every image, every casualty log. The pattern began to take shape. Northern ridge line, 900 to 1,200 meters, elevation advantage. Always at dawn. Always the same time window. Confidence masquerading as variation. That was the first mistake. By the second night, Camilla already knew where they'd strike next, the same stretch of road. Same high ground, same arrogance. When she left the base, no one saw her go. She moved like a shadow between vehicles and tents, disappearing into the hum of generators and the glow of red lights. Outside the wire, The desert was endless, wind scraping across rock and silence swallowing everything. She climbed for hours, her rifle and pack heavy on her shoulders, her boots sinking into the coarse dust that coated the mountain path. At the crest, the world opened into a pale gray dawn. The ridge line stretched for miles, the convoy route below like a thin scar across the earth. She found her position an angle with overlapping sightlines across 3 probable firing points. She dug in, set camouflage, adjusted her scope. Every motion slow, deliberate, quiet. Then she waited. Waiting, that was her real weapon. For 42 hours she didn't move. She ate in silence, drank sparingly, relieved herself only in darkness. She watched through the glass, eyes scanning every bush, every shadow. She became part of the terrain, breath matching the rhythm of the wind, pulse slowing until it was almost imperceptible. The morning of the convoy she saw it, movement. 2 women 800 meters away appearing from the northern ridge. Civilian clothes over tactical vests. Professional, confident. Dragunov rifles. They set up quickly, too quickly. Camilla frowned. It was too easy. Her instincts whispered what training couldn't: bait. If those 2 were decoys, the real threat would be somewhere else, further back, higher up. She adjusted her scope, scanning the terrain at maximum range. There. A flicker, a shift in the air that didn't belong. 2 more figures, 1,100 meters out, almost invisible, setting up overwatch. So that was the plan. The decoys draw counter-snipers out. The overwatch kills whoever takes the bait. Smart, ruthless, professional. Camilla smiled faintly, not admiration, just recognition. She used the same trick once. She shifted her rifle, calculated wind, temperature, humidity, elevation. Numbers danced in her head, precise and cold. The convoy rolled into the valley, 3 vehicles, sunlight bouncing off windshields. The decoys adjusted aim. Camilla didn't. Her crosshairs were already on the Overwatch team. She breathed 1 second, 2, 3. The trigger broke like glass. The shot cracked across the valley, echoing between ridges. The Overwatch sniper dropped instantly. Before the spotter could even flinch, Camilla had already chambered another round. Second shot. Second fall. 2 down. The decoys froze, realizing what had happened. They scrambled for cover, their precision unraveling into panic. Camilla didn't chase. Not yet. She learned long ago, the patient hunter always wins. Through her scope, she watched them retreat east toward the canyon just as she expected, toward their rally point. She exhaled, slow and steady, and whispered to herself, barely audible, a ritual no one ever heard. They think they're running, they're walking straight into me. And then she moved. The hunt had begun. She moved low, steady, deliberate, every step placed with the silence of someone who'd spent years learning how not to exist. The ridge fell away into a network of dry canyons, sharp-edged and sunburned. Each shadow looked like a threat. Each gust of wind sounded like breath. Camilla descended carefully, rifle cradled close, her mind already 3 moves ahead. Sniper hunting wasn't about speed. It was about rhythm. Move too fast and you became noise. Move too slow and you lost control of the tempo. The trick was to make the terrain forget you were there. Camilla had done this before, too many times to count, but something about this hunt felt different. It wasn't just another mission. It was personal, not because of vengeance or pride, but because these women were everything she could have become if she'd been born on the other side of the line. 5 women, 5 ghosts, and each one had a story just like hers, trained, disciplined, precise. But somewhere, something had twisted. Somewhere, they'd started believing the myth of their own invincibility. That belief would kill them. The sun was higher now, the air trembling with heat. From her elevated angle, she saw faint dust trails, the decoys moving fast through the canyon below. Camilla paralleled them from above, keeping distance, staying unseen. The desert floor shimmered, hiding movement in its mirage, but her optics cut through illusion. They were good, she had to admit it, checking corners, scanning the high ground, moving in tight intervals. These weren't panicked recruits. They were trained hunters forced into retreat, and they knew it. But they didn't know who was watching them. Camilla paused behind a cluster of rocks, checking her rangefinder. 450 meters. A clean downhill angle. She waited as they entered the junction, two dark figures in the middle of pale dust and silence. She could hear her own breathing, the faint tick of her pulse in her ear. The lead sniper stepped into view first, scanning ahead. The other covered the rear. Camilla's trigger finger tightened slightly. Her breathing slowed. The crosshairs found the center of the lead sniper's chest. She fired. The sound echoed once, then was gone. The first sniper dropped instantly. The second dove for cover, rolling behind a cluster of rocks, her rifle swinging up in one smooth motion. The reaction was fast, too fast. This wasn't a rookie. The precision in that movement told Camilla everything she needed to know. Shadow. The medium-range specialist, the aggressive one, the one who thrived on pressure. Camilla shifted position, keeping her barrel low and her silhouette broken. She could almost feel Shadow's presence across the canyon, that electric awareness that existed only between two predators who understood each other. Neither moved for nearly 10 minutes. Flies buzzed around the canyon floor. A hawk circled overhead, silent. The sun burned higher, dragging long shadows behind the rocks. The air between them tightened, coiled like a wire. Shadow made the first mistake. She twitched her barrel slightly too high while scanning. The scope caught sunlight for half a second, just half a second, but it was enough. Camilla saw it, that flash, and knew exactly where to aim. But she didn't shoot. Not yet. Because patience wasn't just a tactic. It was her faith, her belief that stillness could be stronger than violence. Shadow shifted again, perhaps realizing she'd been seen. She cursed quietly, barely audible through Camilla's headset mic, picked up from her remote recorder. The woman was breathing harder now. Fear was creeping in, that subtle vibration that turned expertise into instinct. 12 minutes passed before Shadow moved again. She broke from cover, sprinting toward the canyon exit, a blur of speed and precision. Camilla's scope tracked her movement like a heartbeat, smooth, constant. The lead was perfect. Distance, 450 meters, wind minimal. The rifle bucked once. Shadow fell mid-stride, rolling lifelessly across the sand until the canyon swallowed her stillness. 4 down. Camilla lowered her rifle slowly, exhaling through her nose. She didn't celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. Sniper kills weren't triumphs, they were equations solved with permanent ink. But one variable remained. Viper. The name hung in her thoughts like unfinished business. She knew Viper wouldn't run. A leader like that didn't run. She stay, observe, learn, waiting for a mistake, waiting for revenge. And Camilla, she was counting on it. Her radio crackled for the first time since insertion. Harris, this is Sentinel Command. We're observing your engagement. Confirm, 4 hostiles neutralized. Confirmed, she said quietly. 1 remains, leader codename Viper. Do you need support? Negative. Support would expose me. I need her to think she's still the hunter. A pause, then, copy, stay sharp. Extraction available on request. Not yet, Camilla said. This isn't over. She shut off the radio and let silence return. The silence felt heavier now. Hours passed as she moved through the ridge line, slow, methodical, every step calculated to avoid noise. The terrain had changed from coarse sand to broken rock. Each sound carried farther here. The wind whistled through the stone like a voice calling her name. She searched for signs, the smallest clues, displaced soil, fresh prints, a scuff mark, the faint, unnatural line of a bipod pressed into dirt. And then she found it, Near a rock formation overlooking the valley, a shallow impression, fresh, less than a day old. Someone had been here prone position, scanning the field. Someone patient, someone studying her. Viper. Camilla crouched, her hand brushing the dirt where Viper had lain. She could almost feel the woman's thoughts, the calculation, the control. It was like touching a ghost who hadn't left yet. She looked up at the horizon. The sun was bleeding out, the desert fading into orange and violet. She'd have to hold this ground through the night. Night was dangerous, but darkness was home. As the last light disappeared, she established a new position overlooking the valley floor. Her rifle rested on her pack, scope adjusted for low visibility. She activated her night optics. The world turned green and alive. Every few minutes she scanned sectors, north, east, west. The south ridge was quiet, too quiet. At 200 hours, a faint flicker appeared in her thermal scope, 700 meters away. Movement, slow, deliberate, crawling through cover toward a perfect firing angle. Viper. It had to be. Camilla steadied her breathing. She could take the shot now. But through thermal, that wasn't her style, not unless she was certain. So she waited. Viper reached a small plateau, her silhouette clearer now in the night vision. She was setting up, careful, disciplined. The same precision Camilla had admired from the photo. The woman adjusted her bipod, scanned the horizon through her scope, and stopped, aiming directly at the area Camilla had occupied earlier. She thought she had the drop on her. Camilla smiled faintly. Not arrogance, just quiet respect. The woman was good. But she was predictable. Camilla adjusted her angle by 2 degrees, her body perfectly aligned behind the rifle. She checked the data one last time, 680 meters. Minimal wind, cold air, slight upward slope. She inhaled, exhaled, waited for her heartbeat to settle. Then squeezed. The rifle cracked once, lightning across the silence. Through her night vision, she saw the body jolt, fall sideways. Motion stopped. No second shot needed. Viper was down. Camilla stayed still, scanning for several minutes, ensuring no one else remained. There was nothing but the endless whisper of wind. She keyed her mic. Sentinel command, Harris, all 5 hostiles neutralized, area secure. Copy Harris, extraction inbound, outstanding work. Outstanding work. The phrase felt hollow. She watched the horizon lighten with dawn before she finally packed her gear. Every motion slow, mechanical, detached, like muscle memory, was doing the work while her mind floated somewhere else. 40 minutes later, the distant thump of rotors grew louder. The extraction bird appeared, a dark shape slicing across the pale morning sky. Dust swirled as it landed near her position. She climbed aboard, rifle across her lap. Inside, no one spoke. The crew chief gave her a thumbs up. She nodded back. They'd all heard the story already. Word spread fast. 5 enemy snipers. 72 hours. 1 woman. As the helicopter lifted off, Camilla looked down at the terrain below, the canyons, the ridges, the ghostly trail of her footprints fading in the wind. She thought about the 5 women she'd just killed. Each one had been her mirror, same patience, same discipline, same belief in their cause. She wasn't sure if victory was the right word for what she felt. Maybe it was closer to sorrow. When they reached forward operating base Sentinel, the landing zone lights cut through the haze. Major Chen was waiting, arms folded, expression unreadable. 5 for 5. That's what the official report would say. But numbers never told the truth. Numbers were clean, war wasn't. Chen stepped forward as she disembarked. 5 for 5 in 72 hours, he said. That's the most successful counter-sniper operation in this theater. Camilla nodded once, unslinging her rifle and handing it off to the armorer. They were good, she said quietly, but they had patterns. Everyone does eventually. You make it sound simple. "It is simple," she replied. "Wait in the right place at the right time with perfect patience. The hard part is discipline, doing everything right when your life depends on it." Rodriguez approached then, awkward, guilty. "Sergeant Harris, I owe you an apology. I didn't think one operator could do it." Camilla met his eyes. 5 snipers in 5 positions aren't one problem. They're 5 separate ones. You solve them one at a time. She turned, walking toward her quarters, boots echoing faintly against the concrete. Soldiers along the way stepped aside, some whispering, some staring. Respect, curiosity, fear. They all felt the same in moments like this. One young private leaned toward his sergeant. "Who is she?" The sergeant didn't hesitate. "That's Harris, the one they call when snipers need killing." Camilla disappeared into the dim hallway. Inside her quarters, she sat on her bunk, her gear still dusted with the sand of the ridge line. She stared at her hands, steady, unshaking, and wondered for a fleeting second when they'd start trembling again. But they never did. Because for Camilla Harris, emotion was a luxury. Reflection came later, in silence, in stillness, in the brief moments between missions. And somewhere deep inside she knew this wouldn't be the last time. The base always felt quieter after a mission, not because people spoke less, but because they looked more. Every soldier who passed her in the corridor had the same expression, curiosity mixed with unease. She didn't blame them. 5 dead enemy snipers in 72 hours. No casualties, no backup, no chatter, just silence, math, and precision. To them, she was something between legend and ghost. Camilla didn't care for either. In her quarters, the hum of the air conditioner filled the space where her thoughts should have been. The gear she'd used on the ridge lay spread across her bunk, cleaned, disassembled, reassembled, every piece in its place. It was supposed to be routine. The after-mission ritual always was. Clean the weapon, file the report, sleep for 4 hours, pretend it didn't matter. But that night sleep didn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw them. Not their faces, those faded quickly in her memory. What lingered was the discipline, the stillness before each shot, the patience in their setups, the understanding that they'd all believed in something just like she did. They were mirrors, broken ones maybe, but mirrors all the same. She rolled onto her side, staring at the wall where her rifle case leaned against the corner. The label still read M210, Serial 17H, the same rifle that had ended 89 kills, worth of terror. The same rifle that had rewritten her own reputation. But reputation was a strange currency. The higher it grew, the less human you became. At dawn the knock came. 3 quick raps. Measured, official. She knew it before she even stood. Major Chen waited outside, holding a file in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. He looked tired, but in his eyes was the same look she'd seen before, the weight of needing her again. "Sergeant Harris," he said, "sorry to wake you." "You didn't." He handed her the file. Another situation, different sector, similar problem. She didn't open it right away. She just studied the folder, the edges creased, the paper still warm from his hand. How similar. 3 enemy snipers, male, experienced. Over 60 confirmed kills between them. They've been crippling supply convoys near the northern pass. Same patterns: hit, move, disappear. Camilla said nothing. Chen waited, then added softly, "Command wants to know if you're available." Her eyes lifted, calm and steady. "When do I leave?" 72 hours. "I'll need 48 to study their patterns," she said. 12 to position myself, 12 to finish the job. Chen nodded. He'd expected that exact number. "Will that be enough time?" Camilla finally opened the file. Photos, maps, intercepted comms, trajectory data. She flipped through them with methodical precision, absorbing details faster than she read them. "They're good," she murmured. Better than the last team, but they've made mistakes. 2, maybe 3. What kind? Confidence, she said. You can see it in the timing. They're not changing rhythm. They're following a success pattern. That's always the beginning of the end. Chen's expression softened, something between admiration and concern. You make it sound inevitable. It is. She closed the folder. 3 problems, 3 solutions. He hesitated before speaking again. You know, most operators would show at least some hesitation before taking another solo hunt this soon. Camilla's gaze met his, calm, steady. Most operators aren't trained to hunt hunters. He nodded slowly, then turned to leave. But before he did, he asked, "Do you ever think about it afterward? The ones you kill?" She didn't answer immediately. The question hung there, raw and real. Finally, she said, "Thinking about it doesn't change it, but not thinking about it changes you." He nodded once quietly and left. The door clicked shut. She stood alone again, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence like static. Later that morning, she walked across the base to the firing range. Not to train, just to listen. Every gunshot was a language to her. The rhythm of breathing, the hesitation before the trigger, the echo that followed. She learned to hear fear in the sound of a rifle. Excitement, too. You could always tell who trusted the weapon and who was trying to make it obey. She waited until the range cleared, then set up her own gear. The desert wind pushed against her cheek as she lay prone. She loaded 1 round, just 1. Through the scope, the world narrowed to a single point, a target 300 meters out. She didn't fire, she just watched. After a long minute, she finally whispered, "You don't beat snipers by shooting faster. You beat them by breathing longer." The shot broke the silence like punctuation. Perfect center. 2 days later, the helicopter lifted off from Sentinel under a pale sunrise. Camilla sat near the open door, wind tugging at her hair, the landscape passing beneath like a map she already knew by heart. Different theater, same story. The forward base she landed at was smaller, remote, temporary, built for operations too dangerous to sustain long. She was met by a young lieutenant who looked barely 23, his uniform still creased from the supply crate. "Ma'am, Sergeant Harris," he stammered, "we've been expecting you. Command says you're to have full operational independence." Camilla nodded. "Good, then don't expect me again until it's done." He blinked, unsure how to respond. "Yes, ma'am." Inside the operations tent, the air smelled like dust and old coffee. A large tactical map covered the table. Red markers dotted a winding road through mountain passes. Each marker represented a kill. 3 shooters, the lieutenant said, reading from his notes. Code names, Wolf, Ghost, and Priest, all trained under a foreign special reconnaissance unit before defecting. They operate in alternating pairs. The last hit took out a convoy commander, medic, and driver in under 90 seconds. Camilla studied the pattern, distances, wind angles, timing between shots. Each kill told her something. Wolf favored 900 meters. Ghost, closer, 600. Priest, unpredictable, switching distances, alternating between moving and stationary targets. That kind of variety wasn't randomness. It was control. "They're coordinated," she said softly, "each one covering the weakness of the other. Wolf anchors the range. Ghost pressures the midfield. Priest creates chaos." The lieutenant frowned. "So how do you stop something like that?" "By breaking the rhythm," she said simply. "Every sniper needs a sense of control. Take it away and they stop being hunters. They start being human." That night she began her study. Satellite photos, ballistics, wind profiles, terrain elevation data. Hours passed. The room dimmed. The only sound was the turning of pages and the scribbling of notes. On the 4th hour she stopped. Her pen hovered above the map. A pattern had revealed itself. They were using the same ridge system for each ambush, alternating angles, but always the same retreat path. It wasn't arrogance this time. It was logistics. A hidden supply route, maybe. Camilla smiled faintly. "Everyone leaves fingerprints," she whispered, "even ghosts." At dawn, she left the base without fanfare. Her pack weighed 30 kilograms, her rifle strapped across her back. She moved through the narrow defile leading into the mountains, the sky turning gold behind her. The world here felt different, colder, sharper. The rocks were darker, the silence deeper. She walked until the air thinned and her breath came in slow clouds. Then she stopped, scanning the valley below through her scope. 3 likely firing positions, 2 north-facing, 1 west. She chose none of them. Instead, she climbed higher, to a place even snipers wouldn't expect, where the air burned thin and the wind carried no scent of man. There she waited. The first day passed in stillness. The second crawled by under a blanket of cloud. On the third morning, she saw movement. 3 figures far below, crawling into position. Wolf, ghost, priest. They moved with fluid discipline, each scanning a different sector. They were good, very good, the kind of good that came from hundreds of hours of practice and the certainty of success. But Camilla saw the flaw immediately. Their triangle of fire overlapped too much. They built a web that could catch anything except her. She breathed, steadying herself. Her rangefinder blinked, 980 meters. Too far for comfort, perfect for poetry. She watched them settle, watched them prepare, watched them believe. And then quietly, like a prayer only she could hear, she whispered to herself. 3 problems, 3 solutions. She adjusted her rifle, waited for wind to steady, and prepared to show them the difference between hunting and surviving. The mountain breathed. That was how she always described it in her head, the low, constant movement of air, the small shifts of temperature, the sound of dust sliding against stone. It wasn't lifeless. It was alive, ancient, patient, like it had seen this before. Hunters and hunted, wars and whispers. Through her scope, the world existed in pieces, a fraction of a ridge, a sliver of movement, a thread of shadow that didn't belong. Camilla Harris lay in silence, body aligned with the slope, face half buried in the coarse dirt. Her heartbeat had slowed to a rhythm she could count between breaths. 1 inhale, pause, 1 exhale. 980 meters below, 3 men crawled into position. Wolf, ghost, priest. Even without seeing their faces, she could tell who was who. Wolf moved like a veteran, efficient, methodical, the kind of motion that came from repetition. He wasn't just setting up a position. He was building a sanctuary. Ghost, by contrast, was all instinct. Quick bursts of movement, head constantly scanning, restless eyes sweeping for threats that weren't there yet. Priest was something else entirely. Slow, almost deliberate to the point of arrogance. He moved like someone who already believed the outcome was written. Camilla adjusted her scope's magnification. The 3 formed a perfect triangle of death, overlapping fields of fire, covering each other's weaknesses. It was flawless until someone saw it from above. She smiled faintly. Flawless was another word for predictable. The convoy they'd come to destroy was still 2 hours out. That gave her time. She studied every motion, the angle of their rifles, the direction of their optics, even how their heads tilted when they scanned sectors. Small details that revealed comfort zones. Wolf faced north, always north. Ghost covered the valley's east flank, Priest southwest. No one watched behind. That was the first opening. Camilla crawled backward inch by inch until she disappeared behind the crest of the ridge. Then she began a slow, deliberate move around the mountain's curve, staying low, minimizing silhouette. Each step calculated, each breath counted. The terrain cut her hands, tore at her knees, but she didn't feel it. Pain was information, nothing more. The sun crawled across the sky, dragging the heat with it. Her canteen water had gone warm, metallic. She drank anyway. 3 hours later, she reached a secondary position overlooking their flank, a perch that gave her sightlines none of them could anticipate. They were still there, still waiting, still confident. Wolf adjusted his scope, steady and deliberate. Ghost chewed something, gum or nerves. Priest prayed silently, lips moving without sound. Camilla dialed in her rangefinder again. 952 meters to Wolf, 971 to Priest, 1,003 to Ghost. 3 problems, 3 equations. She chose Wolf first. Not because he was the leader, but because he was the anchor. Remove the anchor and the web collapsed. She adjusted for wind, which came down the valley in uneven waves. Crosswind, 12 kilometers per hour, shifting east to west. Temperature, 31 degrees Celsius. Humidity low, air pressure thin. Her breathing stilled. She found the natural pause between heartbeats. Her finger brushed the trigger. The shot broke the world. Through her scope, Wolf fell back, body stiffening before rolling sideways. Ghost jerked his head toward the sound. Priest froze mid-prayer. Camilla had already moved the scope to the next target, Ghost. He was reacting, scanning, shifting, searching. Panic had replaced discipline. The second shot came 4 seconds after the first. Ghost dropped. Priest hit the ground, rolling for cover, his rifle swinging toward her general direction. He was fast, too fast. The round he fired hit the rocks below her position, spraying shards across her face. She blinked blood and dust away, wiped her cheek with the back of her glove and rolled left, changing position. She stayed low, moved 10 meters, then set up again, heart pounding now not from fear but from precision's edge. Priest was shouting something, short, angry bursts in a foreign tongue. He didn't know who he was talking to. He didn't know he was alone. Camilla adjusted her rifle once more. Range, 800 meters now, easier, cleaner. But she didn't fire. She watched him instead. He crawled uphill, scanning, breathing fast. His confidence was gone, his rhythm broken. And then, in a single motion, he stopped moving, dropped his rifle, and pulled something from his vest. Binoculars. He was trying to see her. Camilla almost pitied him. She waited until he brought the optics to his eyes, searching desperately for a ghost that wasn't there. Then she fired. The impact knocked him backward. The binoculars fell into the dust beside him, lenses cracked, staring blankly into the sky. The echo rolled down the valley, fatting into wind. 3 shots, 3 kills. She exhaled once, long and slow, then closed her eyes for a moment. The rifle's metal was warm beneath her hand. Down below, the convoy kept moving, unaware they'd just passed through a valley that should have been their grave. Camilla stayed in position until sunset, waiting, watching, making sure there were no others. By the time she began the descent, the mountain air had turned cold. Shadows stretched long and thin, wrapping the valley like a shroud. Her body ached from stillness, but her mind was sharp, too sharp to rest. Each mission left a residue, a vibration that didn't fade easily. Back at the forward base, the same young lieutenant met her near the landing zone, eyes wide. "We heard the transmissions go dark," he said. "All 3 targets are." "Neutralized," Camilla said softly. He nodded, swallowing hard. "That's incredible, ma'am." She gave a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's math. They stopped adapting. Once that happens, it's already over." Inside the command tent, Chen's voice came through the radio from Sentinel. "Harris, command confirms visual verification. 3 confirmed kills, clean execution, outstanding work again." She hesitated before answering, "Copy." "Returning to base." "Negative," she said quietly. "I'll remain in the sector until I'm sure it's clear." "Understood." The radio clicked silent. Camilla stood alone in the tent, the hum of equipment filling the stillness. On the table, 3 files lay open: Wolf, Ghost, Priest. Their photos looked ordinary, human. She stared at them for a long time. Then, quietly, she took a pen and drew a single line through each face. It wasn't satisfaction, it was closure. But closure in her line of work never lasted. She left the tent and walked outside. The night air was cold enough to sting. The stars above were countless, distant, unreachable. A medic smoking by a jeep looked up as she passed. "Heard what you did," he said softly. "3 of them, that's something else." Camilla paused, looking at him. "It's just work," she said. He shook his head. "Not that kind of work." She didn't answer. Instead, she turned toward the dark mountains beyond the wire. The same mountains that had tried to hide her enemies. The same mountains that would soon hide others. Because deep down, she knew something she'd never say aloud. Wars didn't end, they just changed coordinates. When she finally returned to Sentinel, it was well past midnight. Chen was still awake, reading reports under a dim lamp. He looked up when she entered. "You don't sleep much, do you?" "Sleep's a variable," she said. "Doesn't fit in the equation." He smiled faintly. "You've done more in the last 2 weeks than most teams do in a year. Command's talking about promotion, training role, stateside." Camilla's face didn't change. "I'm not done yet." "Camilla," he said carefully, "you don't have to keep doing this. There's always another mission. There's never another you." She looked at him calm, detached, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "You're wrong, sir. There's always another me. Somewhere out there, right now, another sniper's learning to breathe slower, to shoot cleaner, to think colder. If I stop, she doesn't." He leaned back, studying her. "What happens when you finally meet someone better?" Camilla turned toward the door, hand on the frame. "Then it's over." "Which part?" he asked. She didn't answer. The next morning she cleaned her rifle in silence, the routine movements grounding her again. Disassemble, wipe, oil, reassemble. Each click of metal against metal sounded like punctuation. Outside, a helicopter passed overhead, the rotors beating like a second heart. Somewhere else, someone was already calling for her. Because that's what they did. They called when snipers needed killing. She didn't look up, didn't smile, didn't rest. She simply whispered under her breath, not a prayer, not a vow, just truth. "There's no such thing as peace for people like me, only intervals between hunts." And with that, she began preparing for the next one. It started with the stairs. Not the fearful kind anymore, these were different. Admiring, awed, dangerous in their own way. Everywhere she walked on base, conversations paused. Soldiers who'd never spoken to her before now nodded, half smiles pulling at the corners of their mouths. Someone started calling her the Ghost of Sentinel. The nickname spread faster than orders ever could. Camilla ignored it. Names were just noise, but the noise was getting louder. She felt it most at the firing range. Men who once joked and boasted now went silent when she sat up beside them. They watched her every motion, the calm, the economy, the silence between breaths. One afternoon, a young corporal approached, eyes wide, rifle held awkwardly. "Sergeant Harris, ma'am, could you show me how you stay so still? I mean, how you make the shot look easy." Camilla looked at him. He couldn't have been more than 20. His hands trembled slightly when he spoke. She remembered being that young once, before stillness had become a kind of cage. She laid her rifle down, pointing toward the target field. "It's not easy," she said softly. "It just looks that way because the hard part happens before the trigger." He frowned before. Stillness isn't about muscle. It's about accepting that you're not in control. The wind, the dust, the heartbeat, they move whether you want them to or not. You learn to move with them, that's all. He nodded slowly, as if trying to understand something that couldn't be taught. Camilla picked up her rifle, fired one round, hit center, then turned to leave. "Don't chase control," she said as she passed him. "Chase patience. It lasts longer." That night she returned to her quarters and found an envelope on her bunk. No name, no insignia, just a single line typed across the top, operational directive, immediate. Inside, the file was thin, 2 pages, one photograph. An aerial image of a mountain pass, somewhere cold, snow instead of sand, pines instead of scrub. The note beneath it was simple. Objective: confirm presence and eliminate high-value sniper asset operating near northern border. COD and AME, Sparrow. DETAILS, unknown gender, unknown affiliation. Rumored kills 47, targets mixed both sides. Camilla frowned, both sides. That wasn't a soldier, that was a phantom. She read it twice, then again. Sparrow wasn't like the others. No pattern, no allegiance, no clear motive, just precision and silence. Major Chen called her to his office the next morning. The look on his face told her everything before he spoke. "This one's different," he began. "Intel's thin, no consistent origin. Sparrow's been hitting patrols, convoys, even local militias. Same style, same precision. Both sides think the shooter belongs to the other." Camilla folded her arms. "You're not sure they even exist?" Chen hesitated. "Until now, no, but last week a recon drone caught this." He pushed a photo across the desk. The image was grainy but unmistakable, a prone figure in white winter gear, rifle aligned perfectly, snow disturbed in clean geometric patterns. Camilla studied it for a long moment. "That's no amateur." "No, that's someone trained like you." The air between them thickened. "What's the mission window?" she asked. 72 hours. Weather's closing in after that." "Extraction. You'll be dropped 10 kilometers from the last known position. From there, you're on your own." She nodded. Chen hesitated again, then said quietly, "Camilla, you've done this longer than anyone. You ever think about what happens when the person on the other side of the scope isn't the enemy?" She looked up at him. "If they're aiming at us, they made that choice." "Maybe," Chen said. "Or maybe they're just following orders like you." Camilla didn't respond. She simply stood, saluted faintly, and walked out. The flight north was long and cold. The landscape below shifted from dust to ice, from beige to white. Mountains rose like teeth through clouds. The hum of the helicopter vibrated through her bones. She sat near the open door again, goggles pulled down, scarf over her mouth. The world outside was a blur of snow and wind. When they reached the drop zone, she stepped out into silence. The snow swallowed the sound of rotors almost instantly. Within seconds, the helicopter disappeared into the clouds, leaving her alone in a world made of white. Every step forward was effort. The air was thin, the cold biting. She adjusted her rifle strap, checked her compass, and began to climb. Sparrow's last confirmed kill site was on the ridge line ahead. 2 coalition scouts found dead, single shots to the heart. No drag marks, no shell casings. Professional clean. Camilla reached the ridge by dusk. She dug a small observation hide beneath a wind-carved ledge, covered the entrance with snow, and settled in. Night came fast. The stars burned hard and cold. The wind screamed across the peaks like a warning. She waited. For hours, nothing. Then movement. A flicker in her scope, far away, too precise to be an animal. She adjusted focus. The shape became clear, a figure in white, prone, rifle aligned. Sparrow. Camilla exhaled slowly. She'd found her. Distance 1,040 meters. Wind unpredictable. Temperature -12. She studied Sparrow's rhythm. The shooter didn't move much, but when they did, it was with the same economy of motion that defined professionals. Checking wind, adjusting scope, slow breaths visible in the cold. The resemblance was unsettling. Camilla's finger brushed the trigger, but she hesitated. Because something was wrong. Sparrow wasn't aiming at the coalition road below. They were aiming higher, toward the ridge opposite Camilla's position. She turned her scope slightly and froze. Another figure. A third sniper, unknown. A trap. Her pulse quickened. The second sniper, unidentified, probably local militia, was scanning for her movement. Sparrow, however, was watching them. And in that frozen moment, Camilla understood. Sparrow wasn't the enemy. Sparrow was about to take the shot that would save her life. A crack split the night. The militia sniper dropped, snow exploding red around the body. Camilla didn't breathe for 3 seconds. Then, slowly, she focused back on Sparrow's position. The white-clad figure didn't move, didn't scan, didn't check the body, just waited. Like they knew she was watching. Camilla's throat tightened. 2 professionals, 2 ghosts, 2 mirrors. The wind carried faint static through her radio, a channel she hadn't used. Then a voice, low and calm, female. "You shouldn't be here." Camilla froze. The voice continued, almost weary. "You're not my enemy, Harris, not yet." Her hand tightened on the radio. "Who are you?" Silence. "Then someone like you, someone who stopped believing in sides." The signal cut. Camilla lowered the radio slowly. Snow fell heavier now, erasing everything. She looked through the scope again. Sparrow was gone. The hide was empty. No trace, no movement, just untouched snow and the whisper of wind. Camilla sat back in the cold darkness, pulse steady but mind racing. For the first time in her career, the hunt hadn't ended in death. It had ended in a question. She returned to the forward post 48 hours later, silent as she'd left. Chen was waiting in the comms tent, fatigue lining his face. "Report." Camilla removed her gloves slowly. Sparrow's real, highly trained, female voice on comms, engaged another hostile sniper before exfiltration. "Friendly. Unknown. Did you have a shot?" Camilla hesitated. "Yes." "Why didn't you take it?" She looked at him, eyes unreadable. "Because she didn't." Chen exhaled. "So what is she, Harris?" Camilla thought for a moment, then said softly, "She's what happens when people like me stop pretending we're different." Chen didn't reply. He just nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling into the silence. As she left the tent, the night air felt heavier than before. Snow drifted against her boots, soft and soundless. Somewhere in that same frozen world, Sparrow was out there, another ghost, another mirror, waiting for her to return. And Camilla knew she would. Not because command ordered it, but because some hunts don't end when you walk away. They follow you. They wait in the quiet places between missions, between breaths, between who you are and who you were supposed to be. And when the silence finally breaks, they begin again. Snow had a sound if you listened long enough. Not the crunch of footsteps or the hiss of wind against rock, the deeper sound beneath it, the pulse of silence, the heartbeat of nothing. Camilla Harris had been hearing it for weeks. She was back in the mountains again, though no one at command had ordered it. Officially, her mission was complete. Unofficially, she'd never stopped hunting. Sparrow had become the ghost that refused to fade. Every night she replayed the recording, that faint voice over the intercepted channel. "You shouldn't be here." The calm certainty in those words disturbed her more than any bullet ever had. Because whoever Sparrow was, she had spoken like someone who already knew her. Camilla had asked for satellite imagery, communications intercepts, any trace. Most came back empty. The few that didn't were inconclusive, a thermal signature here, a faint echo of radio transmission there. Always the same pattern: appear, eliminate, vanish. Sometimes the kills were enemy, sometimes friendly, always precise. A perfect reflection. She spent her days studying maps, her nights listening to the wind. The others at the base started avoiding her again, the same quiet fear she'd carried like armor years ago. Maybe it was better that way. One evening, Major Chen found her in the intel tent, still wearing cold weather gear, face drawn from lack of sleep. "Camilla," he said quietly, setting down a thermos. "You've been up here 3 weeks past your window. Command wants you back." She didn't look up from the satellite photo in front of her. "She's still active." "Maybe, maybe not. You've done enough." "No," Camilla said softly. "I've done half." Chen exhaled, sitting opposite her. "You're not chasing an enemy anymore. You're chasing a reflection. Whatever Sparrow is, she's just the version of you that stopped following orders." Camilla finally looked up. "Maybe that's what I need to understand." "Understand what?" "What happens when I stop?" Chen's expression softened. "You stop when you can live with silence again." She stared at the map, the red marker blinking faintly over a valley she already knew by heart. "Then I'll never stop." 2 days later she left before dawn. No escort, no clearance, just coordinates, instinct, and an ache that felt like gravity. The climb took 16 hours through waist-deep snow and thin air that cut her lungs raw. She moved slow, steady, methodical. Every motion practiced, rehearsed, measured. By the time she reached the ridge, daylight had drained into twilight. She built her hide beneath a snow shelf and waited. Night came early here. The stars hung low and sharp, reflecting off the frozen ground like shards of broken glass. For 3 nights, nothing. No signal, no movement, just the sound of the wind and her own heartbeat echoing through the scope. On the 4th night, the wind changed direction. With it came a sound, distant, faint, but unmistakable, a rifle bolt sliding into battery. Camilla's pulse slowed. She turned her scope toward the sound. There, across the valley, half a kilometer away, a glint of glass, barely visible, a lens catching starlight. "Sparrow." Camilla adjusted her magnification until the figure came into focus. White camouflage, snow mask, same precision as before. She whispered under her breath, "You came back." Her radio hissed softly, a whisper of static, then that same voice, calm as falling snow. "I told you this wasn't your fight." Camilla didn't move, and yet here we are. A pause. "You should have stayed away." "So should you." Silence stretched between them, not the absence of sound, but a dialogue of breaths, scopes, and heartbeats. Finally, Sparrow spoke again. "They trained us the same way, different uniforms, same doctrine, same lies." Camilla felt something twist inside her. "You're ex-military." "Was," Sparrow corrected, "until I realized I was killing mirrors. Every time I looked through a scope, I saw myself. One day I stopped pulling the trigger." Camilla's voice lowered. "You killed people after that." "Only the ones who didn't stop." Snow drifted over her rifle, melting against the warm metal. She brushed it away, never taking her eyes off the figure across the valley. "What's your end game?" "Ending the game." Camilla shook her head slowly. "That's not how it works." Sparrow's voice softened. "Then you already know you'll never leave this place." Camilla didn't answer. The wind howled between them, carrying fragments of snow like dust. For hours they stayed locked in silence, two invisible women lying in the frozen dark, each knowing that the slightest mistake would end everything. When dawn finally broke, Sparrow was gone again. Days blurred together after that. Camilla hunted shadows, followed trails that vanished as soon as she found them. Each time she thought she had Sparrow cornered, a new clue emerged, a footprint that led nowhere, a cartridge half buried in snow that didn't match Sparrow's rifle. She began to question herself. Maybe Sparrow wasn't evading her. Maybe Sparrow was leading her somewhere. The thought settled deep, heavy, unwelcome. One afternoon, a blizzard rolled through the valley, visibility dropping to nothing. Camilla sheltered inside a narrow cave, wrapped in a thermal blanket, rifle across her knees. The radio crackled again. "You're tired," Sparrow's voice said softly. Camilla looked toward the cave mouth. "You think fatigue makes me weak?" "No, it makes you human. You used to be one. Camilla's jaw tightened. I still am. Then why are you out here alone? Camilla didn't answer. She pulled the radio closer, the metal cold against her glove. What do you want from me? To see if there's anything left of the person they trained you to forget. The storm howled louder. Sparrow continued, voice steady. They call you a hero, but heroes are just ghosts people build to make death easier to accept. You've given them comfort. I'm giving them consequence. Camilla's breath fogged in front of her face. You think killing balance kills the lie. I think it ends the illusion. Static hissed, then silence. Camilla set the radio down and stared at it for a long time. For the first time in years, she didn't know whether she was hunting or being hunted. Outside, the blizzard eased by dawn. The world was clean again, erased. She stepped out, scanning the valley below. Their footprints faint but fresh, moving uphill, toward the ridge. She followed. Each step burned her lungs, her vision blurred from cold and exhaustion. But she kept going until she reached the crest. And then she saw it. A small cairn of stones. On top, a single bullet casing, polished, deliberate. Engraved into the brass were 2 words scratched by hand. For you. Camilla froze. Wind whipped her hair across her face. The message wasn't taunting. It was an invitation. She picked up the casing, turned it in her gloved fingers. It was her caliber, Win Mag, her bullet. Sparrow had taken it from one of her old hides. She wasn't the hunter anymore. She was the quarry in someone else's lesson. Camilla sat down on the snow, staring at the valley below. She didn't raise her rifle, didn't scan for movement. She just listened to the breathing mountain, to the sound of her own pulse fatting into the wind. For the first time since she'd enlisted, she didn't know what to do next. And in that silence, something inside her broke, not loud, not visible, but real. She whispered into the wind, "What do you want me to see?" No answer came, only snow falling slow and endless. Back at Sentinel days later, Chen read her report in silence. The words were neat, disciplined, emotionless. Engagement status, unresolved. Target Sparrow. Result, undetermined. Notes, subject demonstrated identical training and tactical reasoning. Mission incomplete. Operator requests redeployment for continued observation. He looked up at her. Observation, that's not what you do, Harris. It is now. You're not hunting her anymore. Camilla's eyes were calm but distant. Hunting implies difference. There isn't one. Chen sighed. Then what happens next? Camilla stood. Next, I learn why she stopped. She walked out, the sound of her boots fatting down the hall. Outside, snow still clung to her uniform, melting into dark patches that looked almost like blood. She didn't notice. Her mind was still in the mountains, where somewhere a woman named Sparrow waited, not as an enemy, not as a friend, but as the only person left who might understand what it meant to be the last hunter in a world that no longer needed hunters. And deep down, beneath the discipline and the silence, Camilla knew. The next time they met, one of them wouldn't walk away. But the truth that frightened her most wasn't death. It was the possibility that she wouldn't mind. The valley had changed color. The white glare of snow had dulled into gray, the kind of gray that eats distance and time. Camilla Harris moved through it like a shadow, her breath slow, her pulse slower. 3 weeks since the message. 3 weeks since she'd found that bullet engraved with her name. Now she was back on the same mountain, following the same rhythm of wind and silence. But this time she wasn't hunting. Not really. She was listening. She found the cairn again, smaller now, half buried. Beneath it, another casing. Fresh, on the base, scratched in neat block letters, "Still here." She smiled without meaning to. Not amusement, recognition. Sparrow was calling her out, not for revenge, not for death, but for understanding. Camilla built a hide 50 meters downslope, facing the valley. She didn't conceal it perfectly. She wanted Sparrow to see it. Then she waited. 2 hours passed, then 4, then 12. The wind screamed, stopped, screamed again. Snow began to fall, light at first, then heavy. The world blurred into white noise. Through her scope she caught movement. A shape appearing through the storm, a ghost cut from the same pattern as her own. Sparrow. She moved with that same effortless control, no hurry, no wasted motion, as if the mountain itself was making room for her. Camilla tracked her through the crosshairs, but she didn't fire. The barrel followed, steady, patient. She just watched. Sparrow stopped halfway across the ridge, lowered her rifle, and raised one hand, palm open. A signal, not surrender, invitation. Camilla exhaled. Her finger tightened slightly, then eased. She stepped out of her hide. The cold hit her face like glass. Snow clung to her eyelashes as she moved downhill, rifle slung, hands visible. The two women stopped 20 paces apart, white against white, their breath fogging in the same rhythm. Neither spoke at first. The silence between them said everything. Then Sparrow broke it. I wondered how long it would take you. Camilla's voice was low, steady. You left me breadcrumbs. Not breadcrumbs, Sparrow said. A mirror. They circled each other slowly, weapons still slung, eyes locked. Sparrow's face was younger than Camilla expected, late 20s maybe, but the eyes were old. Too old. The eyes of someone who'd seen too many endings. Camilla studied her movements, shoulders square, weight evenly balanced. Every detail screamed training. Military, special reconnaissance, maybe even the same school. Who taught you? Camilla asked. The same doctrine that built you, Sparrow said quietly. Different language, same math. Why walk away from it? Because it doesn't end. Not until we stop pretending there's a difference between targets and reflections. Camilla shook her head. You think killing us evens the equation? Sparrow's gaze didn't waver. I'm not killing us. I'm ending the illusion that anyone wins. The wind rose, snow cutting between them like glass. Camilla's fingers itched to return to her rifle, but she resisted. Sparrow looked down at the snow, her voice softer now. You're not here because of orders. You're here because you need to know how it feels to stop pulling the trigger. Camilla's breath hitched. And what happens when I do? Sparrow looked up again. You find out whether there's anything left worth saving. For a moment the world stilled, no wind, no noise, just two figures standing in a white silence that stretched forever. Then from the valley below came the crack of gunfire. Single shot. Then another. Then 3. Both women dropped instantly, instincts overriding thought. Camilla rolled behind a ridge, unslinging her rifle. Sparrow moved parallel, scanning sectors. Not mine, Sparrow said over the wind. Not mine either, Camilla replied. They both turned scopes downslope. Through the storm, dark figures moved, half a dozen, maybe more. Militia, no insignia. How long? Camilla asked. Long enough to follow you, Sparrow said. They've been tracking heat signatures. They think I'm you. Camilla's lips pressed tight. That makes both of us targets. Sparrow nodded once, then we fix it. Without another word, they fell into rhythm. 2 rifles, 1 purpose. Camilla picked targets from the left flank. Sparrow handled the right. The storm masked the sound, but each shot was clean, measured, precise. The militia never stood a chance. When the last body dropped, the silence that followed was different, heavier. Camilla stayed behind her scope, breathing through the adrenaline. You didn't have to help. Sparrow's reply came quietly. I didn't help you. I removed witnesses. Camilla almost smiled, cold. Efficient. The blizzard thinned, revealing streaks of red in the snow below. They both watched for a long moment. Then Sparrow stood. Now you understand why I stopped. Camilla lowered her rifle. Because it never ends. Sparrow turned, face unreadable behind her frost mask. Because eventually, the people who built us forget what we're for, and we start asking the same question. What question? Sparrow looked past her, into the distance, into the storm that was already rebuilding itself. Who we were before we became useful. Camilla swallowed hard. You think there's a way back? Sparrow's eyes softened just slightly. No, but there's a way out. She unslung her rifle, placed it in the snow between them. The gesture was deliberate. Surrender, maybe something else. Camilla stared at the weapon identical to her own. Same make, same scope, same wear marks on the grip. How many like us do you think are still out there? Camilla asked. Sparrow shook her head. Enough to keep the world quiet, not enough to change it. She took a step back, voice low. You'll report this, won't you? Say you neutralized the threat. Camilla hesitated. You're not giving me much choice. There's always a choice. That's what separates us from the orders we follow. For a long time, neither moved. The storm began to fade. The valley below looked almost peaceful again. Finally, Camilla said softly, What happens if I do? Sparrow smiled, a small, tired smile that looked like forgiveness. Then maybe you stop becoming me. She turned, walking into the snow, her white silhouette dissolving into the landscape. Camilla didn't call after her, didn't raise her weapon. She just watched until Sparrow was gone. Only when the last trace vanished did she notice what was left behind. In the snow where Sparrow had stood, a small metal tag, military issue, name scratched out, one word engraved underneath. Peace. Camilla knelt, brushed the snow away and picked it up. The metal was ice cold, biting against her glove. She closed her fist around it, feeling the edges dig into her skin. She stayed there for a long time, kneeling in the snow, surrounded by silence that wasn't empty anymore, it was full. Full of everything unsaid, unshot, unfinished. When she finally stood, she left her own rifle behind beside Sparrow, two weapons lying parallel in the frozen light. Then she walked down the ridge, unarmed, the tag still clenched in her hand. Hours later, a patrol found her walking toward the extraction point. She didn't resist when they asked where her rifle was. She just said, Up there. It's where it belongs. When the helicopter lifted off, she didn't look back. The ridge disappeared behind cloud and snow. Back at Sentinel, Chen was waiting. He stared at her as she stepped off the landing pad, face pale from cold, eyes distant but clear. You found her, he said. Yes. Is she dead? Camilla paused. No. He frowned. Then why are you back? She reached into her pocket and handed him the metal tag, because she was right. He turned it over in his hand, reading the single word, peace. What does it mean? Camilla looked out toward the horizon. I think it means we've both stopped pretending we can find it. Chen exhaled slowly. Command, not going to like this report. I didn't write it for them. He studied her face for a moment, then nodded. What will you do now? Camilla's gaze drifted upward to the sky, pale, open, endless. Wait, she said softly, and listen. For what? For silence that doesn't feel like punishment. That night, as the base settled into its usual hum of generators and distant radio chatter, Camilla sat alone outside her quarters, a cup of coffee cooling in her hands. Snowflakes melted on the rim, vanishing instantly. In the distance, the horizon glowed faintly where the moon fought through clouds. Somewhere beyond that line, Sparrow was still out there, breathing, surviving, carrying the same weight. Camilla closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she didn't hear wind or war. She just heard nothing, the kind of nothing that didn't demand a target. And in that moment, she understood what Sparrow had meant. Sometimes peace wasn't a place. It was the decision to stop chasing the echo of your own gunfire. Morning came without a sunrise. The sky was a dull sheet of gray, stretched thin over the mountains, light without warmth. Camilla Harris walked across the empty airfield, boots crunching on frost, breath curling like smoke. She wasn't sure if she was still on assignment or if she'd already left without telling anyone. No one stopped her. The mechanics gave nods, quiet, respectful. The younger soldiers didn't meet her eyes. Her name had become a story whispered between shifts: the sniper who hunted ghosts, the woman who stopped the unstoppable. But stories never carried the truth. The truth was a weight pressing against her ribs, something she couldn't drop, even when she set her rifle down for good. She hadn't touched a weapon since the ridge. It was strange how light her hands felt now, as if they were waiting for purpose but couldn't remember what that meant. Chen found her by the hangar doors, coat pulled tight against the cold. He'd been avoiding her since she came back, maybe unsure what to say to someone who'd gone looking for a ghost and returned with silence instead. "You're leaving?" he asked. Camilla nodded. "Orders say I've earned rest rotation." He smiled faintly. "That's one way to say retirement." She shrugged. "Maybe it's both." For a moment neither spoke. The wind carried the smell of jet fuel and snow. Finally Chen said quietly, "You know, I keep thinking about her, Sparrow, about what she told you." "So do I." "Do you believe her?" Camilla's gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the mountains cut dark shapes against the pale light. "I believe she meant every word." "And what about you?" She turned to him, voice soft. "I believe I'm tired." Chen nodded slowly. "Then maybe that's the closest thing we ever get to peace." She didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. He extended his hand. "For what it's worth, you changed things here." Camilla shook her head. "No, I just ended noise. Someone else will make more." He gave a sad smile. "That's cynicism." "It's math," she said quietly. She turned and walked toward the waiting transport. Chen watched until she disappeared inside. The flight was long, crossing miles of desert and mountain until the landscape softened into valleys and rivers. Camilla didn't look out the window. She kept her eyes closed, listening to the hum of the engines, counting heartbeats. Every sound reminded her of something: the whine of wind over the fuselage like breath through a scope, the vibration in her seat like the recoil of a rifle. She tried not to remember the faces, not of the enemies, but of the ones who never asked her why. When she finally landed, it was raining. The small civilian terminal smelled of coffee and concrete. She walked outside, duffel over her shoulder, and stood under the overhang watching the water hit the ground. For the first time in years, she didn't have a destination. She found a quiet town at the base of the mountains and rented a room above a mechanic's shop. No one there knew her name. They called her the woman from the airfield, and that was enough. Days passed quietly. She fixed things that didn't need fixing: a radio, a loose hinge, a leaking faucet. She learned the rhythm of civilian silence, which was different from the battlefield kind. Civilian silence had warmth in it, the kind filled by footsteps, conversation, life. Sometimes she walked to the edge of town at dusk and stared toward the peaks, where clouds swallowed the sun. Somewhere up there, she imagined, Sparrow was still breathing, still waiting, maybe watching the same horizon from the other side. The thought didn't bring fear anymore, only understanding. Weeks turned into months. Winter softened into the kind of early spring that barely deserved the name. One morning she woke before dawn, restless. She made coffee, stepped outside, and found the world wrapped in mist. The street below was empty. A newspaper sat on her doorstep, something she never subscribed to. She bent to pick it up, brushing off moisture. No address, no date, just one folded page. Inside, a single photograph. A ridgeline, snow-covered, empty. And below it, written in neat block letters, "Silence HOLDS." Camilla's breath caught. No signature, no coordinates, no message needed. She smiled faintly, that small, private smile that belonged to people who understood something the rest of the world never would. She folded the paper carefully and slipped it into her jacket pocket. Later that day, she hiked up the trail behind town, a narrow path that wound through pine and stone until it opened to a view of the valley. She sat on a fallen log, wind against her face, the sound of birds breaking the quiet. For the first time in years, she let herself breathe without calculation. No angles, no targets, no mission, just air cold and alive. She closed her eyes and remembered Sparrow's last words. "You'll stop when you can live with silence again." Camilla whispered into the wind, "I'm trying." A hawk circled above, distant and free, its cry echoing faintly against the cliffs. She watched it for a long time, then laughed, a soft, disbelieving sound. It felt strange. It felt human. She stood, brushed off her jacket, and started down the trail. That night she wrote her final report. Not the kind command expected, this one wasn't for them. It was for whoever came next. She wrote slowly, each word deliberate. Patience is not the absence of action. It is the perfection of timing. Every sniper learns that. But what they never teach you is what happens after the shot, when the silence finally answers back. You begin to hear things you ignored before. Wind, heartbeats, your own thoughts. They become louder than the rifle ever was. And if you listen long enough, you realize something terrible and beautiful. The silence was never empty. It was waiting. Waiting for you to put down the weapon and listen. She signed it with no name, just a single line at the bottom. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Then she folded the paper, slipped it into an envelope, and left it on the table beside her duffel. The next morning, the room was empty. The bed neatly made, the window open, the envelope still there. The mechanic downstairs heard the bell above the door around dawn, but when he looked, the street was already empty. Out on the highway, a bus moved slowly through the mist, its destination sign blank, its passengers few. Near the back sat a woman with a duffel at her feet and a faint smile at the corner of her lips. Her eyes were calm, her posture relaxed. She didn't look like a soldier anymore. She looked like someone who had finally learned that silence didn't have to mean absence. It could mean peace. The bus disappeared into fog. And somewhere far away, high in the frozen ridges, two rifles still lay side by side beneath the snow, untouched, unfired, aligned perfectly toward the horizon. The wind whispered over them, a sound almost like breath, almost like forgiveness. And in that sound lived the truth both women had come to understand. Wars don't end. People do. But sometimes, if you listen carefully enough, the silence that follows isn't mourning. It's mercy.